Welcome to the garden question and answer video that we do on Sundays. You can ask gardening questions down in the comment section below this video. That's where your questions get picked from. I think Steph's written down 25, and she's actually going to be in this video in just a second, going over some details for the open garden event that's coming up. This is the last day for the weekly garden planner. I forgot that I had done, when I put the $50 discount for the weekly garden planner in for May, I actually did it through June 1st, and today is June 1st as you're watching this. So if you're interested in getting the weekly garden planner for $50 off, the code is on the screen. It's just literally a week by week calendar through the year on how to maintain your garden, and some list that I'm continuing to add to on when to do certain things, when you can prune certain plants and that kind of thing. Okay, there are a few open garden tickets still available, and Steph's about to go over some of the details from that. Saturday morning, I think, is gone at this point. There's a few for Friday PM and a few more for Saturday afternoon, I think, is where we are at this point, but they are running out pretty fast. The address here is 709 Harris Street, and then Steph is going to jump in here and give you some more details.
All right, so Jim told you just a second ago that we live at 709 Harris Street in Raleigh. We live at the end of a dead-end road, a small dead-end road, so it would be really awesome if, like last year, people were so good about this. If people didn't park on the actual road, it's only about 4 houses down, so it's not super long, but it would be really hard to get in and out for people. So unless you have some sort of mobility issue, and then please park right in front of the house if you need to. Just know that otherwise, please park elsewhere. And there's plenty of street parking all over the neighborhood, including a church not too far from us. All right, so we've had some people say that they can't find their original email with the tickets in it. So if you do not have access to that email at this point, just check in with us when you get here, and we'll compare it to like the master list to make sure that, well, not to make sure of anything, just to check you off as present, like elementary school. Anyway, so there are no worries about that. Also, if you are a frequent commenter, I would really love for you to introduce yourself. I mean, you'll introduce yourself anyway with your name, but give me your handle. I know last year we had Zilzensky, I think that's that person's handle, so to speak, and I didn't know until after the garden was done that that person had been here, and I would have loved to have said hello and known that that was that person. I know Jim mentioned also that we are a bee-friendly landscape, so make sure that you're wearing pants if you have some problems with that. We don't really get stung, so it's not a worry for us, but if you have concerns, just wear some pants. It would be great. We will have t-shirts for sale. The ones that we have on the website will be available, and hopefully we will have an open garden t-shirt as well, just celebrating this great experience. Also, you get to save on shipping charges, so you won't have to pay for those if you get them at the open garden. This is going to be how it works. We had someone be concerned that they had to be here for the whole block of time, and you do not. You can come and go. You can come when it starts, go get a cup of coffee somewhere and come back if you feel like it. But we will, and you won't be, you will still be able to be a part of giveaways, because what's going to happen is that you'll put your name in a little bin-like thing. Each hour, I'll pull names to give things away. So you'll still be eligible to win some of the things we're going to give away, which will be a bunch of Southern Living plants. Really excited about that. They looked beautiful last year. Soil Cube, we have one. They've already been, well, I already picked them up. The veggie mix, that's the one we really love. The Pro Plugger right here, we have a few of those as well. They're great to help you with your gardening, especially those of us that have a little bit of mobility issues. It's also really great for that, and I'm going to start using that a lot. We also did some of our own plants, so I'll be giving those away as well. And know that we actually have given 2 of the plants away already. If you're Kim Deal or James Miller, you already won a plant. So please check in about those when you get here. Additionally, we will take some donations of native plants, and it's a really good thing if you know the species when you give it to us, because we do like to know for sure. Gardens in the area, real quickly, Juniper Level and the Plant Delights is going to be open all Friday for people, so you can go look at that exquisite garden and purchase plants if you'd like. And that's on Friday. You can make it a whole weekend of planting experiences or gardening experiences by also going to our Raleigh Rose Garden in our neighborhood. The Ralston Arboretum is right up the street from us. Duke Gardens is only 20-25 minutes, and the North Carolina Botanical Garden is about the same amount. So, and when you get here, if you want to go to a restaurant after you've been here, ask me and I'll tell you some good ones. So thank you guys. I can't wait to meet you all. We love meeting you at Mr. Maple if you were there, and we'll see you here. Thank you.
Let's jump into some questions from last week's video. And again, you can ask questions down in the comments section, and that's where we pick from each week. This person is confused about their native soil in Louisiana Zone 8B. The clay kills their plants. And I've talked about you can use most everybody watching can just plant in your native soil for the most part. You know, you'll see all kinds of amendments people are using and ways we're improving soil and all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, it's kind of okay to plant in native soil typically. Of course, this person's having some issues with things dying in their native soil. So, I mean, you know, we improved this clay soil by using the wood chip method, you know, on top. But if you don't have time for that, or you're planting into existing beds, obviously you can't necessarily do that. The main thing is to plant up high. And if you're in Louisiana, you can likely find pine bark soil conditioner, which is the real fine pine bark that most of the plants are grown in anyway. Most of your shrubs that you buy. If you buy in perennials and annuals, they might be in some sort of peat mix or compost mix or something like that. But most of the shrubs are going to be grown in some sort of bark mix. And if you can find fine pine bark and mix that in with the clay, but really it's about leaving things up above, you know, not burying them too deep, having them raised up. It is going to be the main thing for you while you improve your soil using mulch, you know, using hardwood mulch and other organic material that will break down from the top, you know, from the top down. But that's really, you know, the only thing I can really tell you is just don't plant them too deep in it. A lot of these plants just aren't from places where, you know, they had that heavy clay soil. Now that clay soil does have a lot of the nutrients that the plants like and need. They just don't want to sit down in it. So raising them up is the key. And if you can find pine bark soil conditioner, and that's going to be mostly in the Southeast United States, in the box stores and in the garden centers, that would be helpful. Number 2, can air layering be used to propagate most plants? Yes, definitely. I mean, I've shown bending the limb down into a pot to root things just directly into a container. Of course, you can do it on the stems as well. I can come up here on this crepe myrtle, you know, and wound a place on here, wrap some peat moss or something around a potting soil around this, put it in a plastic bag, and they make things for this now, little shells that basically wrap around the limb and click into place. You fill with soil, and then you root it into that, and then just cut it away from the plant, and you got a new plant with roots. So there's lots of different ways you can air layer like that. Basically rooting, you know, a piece of branch while it's still attached to the plant. Okay, and then cutting it away later is what air layering is, and in various ways to do it. There are plants that just won't root that way. I mean, just, you know, the Daphnophyllum was on the list. So when you say, can most plants be air layered? Yes, but some plants just don't root well at all, and it doesn't work well. And sometimes really older growth, you know, the further I go down into this crepe myrtle, into that older stems, this is not an old plant, but if it was a really old crepe myrtle, the less likely it would be to root. So it's this really, the more juvenile the material is, the more likely it is you're able to get it to root in some way. Okay. Somebody asked my opinion on compost from the landfill. Chip drop won't come to the, you know, they haven't been able to get a chip drop for wood chips. Of course, opinions are terrible on the internet. So anytime the word opinion comes up, I'm like, oh no. So I have a neighbor that, you know, goes and gets the leaf mold every year. That's how he actually, you know, it has a absolutely beautiful garden, and uses the leaf mold from the city to mulch over there every year, and it works well for him. The only time I ever got it down at my old house, I actually paid a dump truck driver that I knew that helped me out on landscape jobs go to the landfill in Raleigh and get material like that. It was in, I think I've told the story before, it was in January, and it was right after all the Christmas trees had been chopped up. And so where my garden did smell fantastic, it was absolutely full of plastic from the Christmas trees. So when, one experience I had with this did not go well. Every time it rained, I was picking shiny bits out of the mulch for a little while. It's great that material exists, and it's, that we can use it, but I would go and maybe take a look at it, before you use it. I mean, the issue I have with it is that so many of my neighbors use chemicals, on their lawns and on, spraying for insects and whatever else they're spraying for, and then they're raking their leaves out to the street, and then those leaves are being taken there, and then they're coming back here. Also, whatever weed seeds ended up in it, so on and so forth. Plastic bits and everything else that are in it. I would prefer not to use it, but it needs to be used. So I don't know, it's a hard question to answer because I had a bad experience with it. I mean, I literally picked plastic out for like 2 years. I was finding shiny bits of plastic. So go and look at it, see what it looks like, and then absolutely use it if it looks like it's pretty good. So I talked about dry root balls in nursery containers filled with pine bark. Their problem is the hydrophobic peat in nursery containers. So like I say, in some smaller containers, typically they might use peat moss to grow perennials and some annuals and that kind of thing. And it's killed a ton of their plants, especially in hot weather. Is there a remedy? Well, there's not a great remedy if you're buying it already done like that, but if you're actually planting into the peat moss, you can mix something, things in it to make it. You can use a wetting agent to make sure it re-wets easily. If you're the one planting the plants into the peat, if you're buying them already in the peat, I don't know how you would get that material into it. So that's a question. I would probably break those root balls up, be a little bit more aggressive breaking those root balls up, and then add some other things to the container or the ground or whatever when you're planting them, hopefully to alleviate that. But yeah, if you're using hydrophobic peat in your processes, then you can use a wetting agent. You can add a wetting agent to it. Okay, so does having an ant colony, a huge one, a detriment to plants around it? It could be. So, you'll see ants in the early part of the season. They're typically on south-facing banks, or they're right along the asphalt edges of your lawn when it's cool outside. They want to be in those spaces early on. And then typically a little later in the season, they want to be in slightly cooler places as the season goes on. And they'll dig right around the bases of your plants. It could create a situation where, for what you see on top of the soil with an ant hill, there's this much down below it. So you're only seeing a tiny little bit of what those ants are actually doing, and they can create a situation where a plant just dries out. So that's what I've seen. That's where I've seen them kill plants, is they're just too dry. What I will do typically, because if it's ants I don't care about, if they're not bothering me, they're not in the house, they're not whatever, is I'll just take a water hose over there and just kind of water that area a bit and just kind of discourage them from being in that space. Hopefully they'll pack up and move on. But that's my, yes, they could potentially create a situation where basically no amount of water will actually water that plant anymore because it's too aerated. Because that's what they're trying to do, stay high and dry. Okay, this person wants a dogwood. Which one is toughest and most disease resistant? Well, the Asian species, like Kusa dogwoods are probably the most disease resistant because the diseases that we have here, some of them came from Asia. So their dogwoods are potentially more adapted to those diseases. But, the Appalachian series, and we're down at Dr. Durr's, been in his garden several times now, and he's got that Appalachian series of native dogwoods seem to be really very, very good plants. So I would look at that if you're looking for one of the native dogwoods. This person's getting sale seeds now. What's the best way to store them for the 2026 season? We don't really do anything other than store our seeds in a little wooden box that keeps them dry. It's probably a seed to seed thing. You think about these seeds are from all over the world, and some of them probably need a little bit of cold storage. Some of them probably need different types of storage. It's mostly all about being dry, obviously, but you may want to look them up on a seed to seed basis to see if there's any of them that need to go in a refrigerator, and be stored that way. We don't. I just make sure that we keep them dry, and germination rates will drop on things a little, some things more than others. But if you're buying seeds right now just for next spring, those should be fine. And most of them should be marked through this fall anyway. For their they test the germination on these seeds, so they'll basically seed out 10 seeds or whatever, and see how many of them germinate, and that'll give you the germination rate on the back of the package. That germination rate drops in time. Some seeds more than others. But if you're buying the seeds now, they're actually that germination rate's probably good for the rest of this year anyway. They're not going to drop much between now and the beginning of next year. Let's see. Person's had crazy amounts of rain in Georgia. It was great at first. Now they have gnats galore and fungal disease problems and mushrooms and anything they can do before or after to mitigate problems. So the only thing we did out here in the garden is make sure the plants aren't endangering themselves, make sure that we have decent air movement around things during these humid months. So we've done some recent pruning that you guys will have seen in videos at this point. Some back here and some up there in the front garden. Other than that, there's just not a lot you can do, right? You just have to wait. You have to wait these things out. Mushrooms are not a problem in your garden. That's just part of that's part of gardening. I don't know about your fungal disease problems. I don't know. So for me, if a plant's causing me, if I had something out here getting leaf spot constantly from the fact that it's just humid here in my area in Raleigh and hot, then I'm probably just going to get rid of that plant overall. But I don't really, there's not a whole lot you can do. You just have to wait. It's going to dry out. We're going the next, I'm guessing you're the same as us, going the next 6 days. It's going to start to warm back up, back into the 80s. I'm in a pullover the last day of May as I'm filming this, and it's 56 degrees outside. It's really wild for us in Raleigh. I realize in the north and other places, as you're hearing me say that, but for us, we usually probably have lows in the 70s at this point at night. But anyway, so it's interesting, and it's been super, super wet. But keeping your plants pruned, placing them in the right places, I mean, that's as much as anything, is having them, making sure that they're drying out. When it does dry out, everything out here can dry out. Nothing is laying on top of itself right now because we just did some pruning to let it dry out. But most of those problems, a lot of the issues that some people will think you have in your garden are just, your garden's alive. Okay. How to keep agapanthus coming back each year. So it needs sharp drainage in the winter time, and sharp drainage just means that water is no amount of rain like we've had recently can drown them. So things like agave, which are Southwest natives, and then agapanthus, which are South African natives, they can actually take a lot of water during the growing season. They don't mind. I mean, heck, agave is made of water. But during the winter time, they don't have any way to use it, and it will kill them and rot them. Same thing with the agapanthus. But all of our agapanthus come back because this soil drains pretty well up in the top part of the soil. I raised them up some. If you wanted additional assurance, you could use permatil or expanded slate or some sort of permanent drainage in the hole when you plant them, just to make sure in the wintertime there's no amount of rain that's going to keep that top 2-3 inches of root mass wet. And that's the way they come back. The other way is to make sure you spring plant them. So I would not, if you're in an area where agapanthus are unlikely to come back because of the combination of cold and wet in the wintertime, that's not something you're going to fall plant. You spring plant it, make sure it's well established going into that first winter. That's true of anything that's marginal. This person has 2 crab apples on a ridge. Both are looking wind blown. The arborist told them not to stake them, but they look like they need it. So, okay, so the thing is, I mean, we don't want to stake plants if we don't have to, because the wind on a tree or a shrub or anything, this thing doing this is what builds tensile strength in it. So you actually want plants to move around a bit, okay? When we fix them in place by staking them, we actually, the plant doesn't build any tensile strength. So it's not actually very strong when we stake them up. So I would prefer not to stake anything, and that's probably where the arborist opinion is coming from, is just don't stake it if you don't have to. But there are things, if the plant looks like it's going to destroy itself because it's leaning over or it's about to fall down, I mean, that's past the point of, you know, of you need to stake it at that point. We have, let me see, how many plants? I think 4 plants staked in this garden. I've got the tree-formed hydrangea paniculata that's back there on the corner of the shed that's still staked. And I think after this year, I'll be able to unstake it. It's just, it needed to build some girth. I've got the redbud, the Golden Falls redbud is staked, and I think it will be staked permanently. That thing tries to bend over every single time I try to detach it. So I don't think it would just be crooked in the garden immediately. The Amelanchier in the front garden, I talked about in a video 2 days ago about it still staked, and I hope to unstake it at the end of this season. I think it will finally be thick enough to do that. And my Chinese snowball viburnum that we just started tree farming last year is still staked. I hope to have all 3 of the 4 of those stakes off, and I think this redbud will be permanently staked before this year's over. I don't want them staked if they don't have to be staked. But sometimes you just have no choice. Otherwise, I mean, what good is it going to do you if they just fall over? So at some point you do need to stake them. Try to get them upright, and then try to take them off the stakes as soon as you can. What plants do we intentionally not have, and why? They're almost all the invasive type things that would take over the garden. You know, there's English ivy growing back here behind us, you know, in the woods. I wouldn't really want Elaeagnus growing in here. I don't particularly like plants that sucker super aggressively. We'll have a few of them out there in the native garden, because some of our native plants, like, you know, can colonize pretty vigorously. So we tend to stay away from, in the main garden over here, from colonizing things, from known invasive things, from things that I don't really have anything over here that's self-seeding. I know a lot of people like, you know, self-seeding type gardens, but we have a mulch cap out here, and we're mulching pretty consistently, and it pretty much prevents any of that from working well anyway. So we don't really have anything that's self-seeding over here. Most of the things that are over here are pretty well behaved. I mean, there are ground covers over here that can, you know, if we turned our back on them for long enough, we'd have to rein them back in. But for the most part, we've tried to have mostly well-behaved things over here, and things that I don't have to, you know, things like, I mean, something like Elaeagnus, if you're using it as a screen, number one, it's, you know, they're in the woods over here because they seed themselves out into the wild. But also, it colonizes, it tries to vine, it'll grow, it has to be pruned multiple times a year because it can grow 6-8 feet in a single season once they're established. So it's also maintenance related too in some of those. You just saw 2 pruning videos in a week, and other than that, there's been a little snip here and a little snip there on a few things, and that's it. This garden is really low maintenance in that way. I don't want to put things in here that I'd have to cut and cut and cut and cut. Okay. Okay, so I've talked about this fertilizing newly planted plants a couple times. This person says they're still confused about adding fertilizer to transplanted plants. If you add fertilizer to a stressed plant, and I said it adds more stress, okay, to tell it to grow immediately. You know, why would stimulating a plant add more foliage, not provide more opportunity for photosynthesis, blah, 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 blah. If you want to fertilize something when you plant it, absolutely fertilize it. when you plant it. And they said many pros add biotone and blood meal or bone meal. Keep in mind, some people may actually be paid for those, you know, for some of those things that get added into anything in a video. Okay, first of all. The other thing is I use plant tone, which contains biotone. So I'm adding biotone to this garden anyway. I don't see the need to add additional biotone to the hole when I dig the hole. They're also, okay, so you're also saying, you know, they'll add bone meal or blood meal or any of those kinds of things. So blood meal is going to be high in nitrogen. Nitrogen is up and down in the soil. But when you're adding things like bone meal or any other thing, you may be adding too much phosphorus. You may be adding too much. When you get to a specific thing that you're adding in the soil, a specific nutrient, keep in mind, you may already have enough of that in the garden anyway, and it could destabilize other things. So just be careful in general, adding anything that could add a lot of a single nutrient. So, okay, so that part aside, okay, if you want to put something in the hole when you dig the hole and it makes you feel better about the $60 or $80 or $150 that you just spent on a plant, go for it. You know, don't go crazy with anything, you know, because, you know, you could definitely cause harm. But there's a big difference here between synthetic fertilizers and organic fertilizers. So if you want to use an organic fertilizer, the organic fertilizer works by soil microbes breaking it down and making it available for the plant in a relationship that plants have in nature already. Okay, this is how they operate. But if you're adding a synthetic fertilizer was designed to be in a form that's available for that plant immediately to use. And that's what I'm talking about, how that plant gets pushed immediately. There's nitrogen there, there's phosphorus there, there's potassium there, there's other microbes, and they're in an available form already. They bypass the natural processes that how plants get fertilizer. You know, basically these trees back here drop leaves on the ground, and those leaves get broken down by beetles and whatever larger things are breaking those things down. And then beneficial bacteria, beneficial fungi are breaking everything down and making it available, making those nutrients that got dropped off the plants. And then they're also breaking rock down and making the material that's in that rock available to those plants as well. And that's just kind of the natural process, right? So those nutrients are available when the plant says, I need it, okay? When I go out there and I throw synthetic fertilizer like a 10-10-10 or something, if I just threw that out there, that's not controlled release, I basically say, here's some nitrogen, here's some phosphorus, here's some potassium, use it, and start growing. And so that's where I'm talking about you can create more stress. I mean, you're not, okay, you just do it, again, anybody that feels like you need to fertilize it when you plant it, add biotone in the hole, do whatever it makes you comfortable, you know, that's the way to do it, if you've had success with it. I'm just saying that I improve the soil. Everything I do is soil-based. I'm not telling the plant to do anything in particular. I'm improving the soil and allowing, when this plant has a demand, well, this is in a container, so it's not a great example of that, but if anything that these plants need, I've made available in the soil through the organic material that's breaking down and the little bit of organic fertilizer that I'm throwing out here. But remember, I got a soil test done too, and I just don't need anything out here. I don't have anything that's like ridiculously low in this soil. And so I don't want to get it out of balance by adding, you know, potential nutrients to it as well. And I know I'm probably confusing people about this, but I really just improve your soil, plant your plants in it, fertilize with a little organic fertilizer, and move on. And keep in mind, people may be being paid for the things that they're telling you or the things that they're showing you. Okay, what is the chartreuse lamandra in the pot? So this, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it because I got the camera a little closer, but this is a lamandra called Miner's Gold. And it does, somebody answered the question last week and said it was Avarillo carex, and that's a pretty good guess because they look very, very similar. But that's actually a lamandra. Lamandra are, I don't know where there's another lamandra that's slightly out of frame over here as well. But they're interesting grass-like plant. another one of those that like sharp drainage in the wintertime if you're have any Lomandra in containers or in the ground or wherever you are that you can grow Lomandra. Typically in the Southwest is where we're going to see most of the Lomandra used. Let's see. What do we do to avoid fungal issues, powdery mildew in our landscape? Again, we're cutting things back a little bit from one another, so that as the humidity picks up a bit and all this rain that we've had recently, the plants are drying out some. But I don't really have anything in this garden that's extremely susceptible to powdery mildew. We have there's a few perennials in here that could get it, but I don't grow any of the giant zinnias that are really super susceptible to it. Don't really grow. We've got some bee balm here, but I haven't had an issue because I got it out in the open a bit. But a lot of the things that get those kinds of issues, I only have 4 big leaf hydrangeas in this garden. And if one of them started seriously getting leaf spot disease, it would probably exit stage left pretty quickly. Again, I've pointed this out a bunch. If you have a single plant in your garden that is causing you 80% of your problems, it might be time for that plant to leave. That way we don't have, I just don't have to deal with something that's an ongoing problem in that way. Most of everything we have in this garden is we don't have a single problem. Right this second, not a single issue like that. And there's 400 different plants in this garden. Again, that's another thing, is the more species, the better. The more, the more opportunity for birds and insects and other things to visit your garden, the healthier overall it is. Okay. Let's see. What does hybridization mean? So it just means, crossing plants together to create new plants. Hybridizing happens in the world with or without humans. It's always been happening. Plants can cross with one another to create new species or new hybrids. When humans do it, we put an X in the name. So we'll have Ilex X Nellie R. Stevens holly. So it was 2 different at least 2 species of hollies mixed together to create that holly. And we put an X there. When nature does it, we would have stumbled upon it and given it a species name, but we tend to use X as kind of human created plant. But there are some plants, so you have the genus, and we're going to talk about this crepe myrtle over and over and over again, Lagostromia. Okay, so this is the crepe myrtle's the genus Lagostromia. These got separated around the planet. So imagine when this was a new genus out in the world, it got separated in various places, in Asia, and speciated. It became slightly different. So there's Lagostromia ferrari, Lagostromia indica, and others. And then humans come along and see, well, this particular crepe myrtle doesn't get powdery mildew. This is great. Goes back to that powdery mildew issue, right? So Lagostromia ferrari doesn't get powdery mildew as badly. Lagostromia indica has the most showy flowers, the showiest of the flowers on them. So what if we crossed them together? And so that's what the National Arboretum and others did to create the hybrid crepe myrtles that most of the ones that we use, like Natchez and Muskogee and other ones with the Indian names, are those crosses. So they're mildew resistant and still very floriferous. They get the red bark from one of the parents. They get the smooth red bark. And so that's what hybridizing is. It's taking two of something. And humans have been doing this for a long time. And I mean, truly a long time. We've turned corn from something that was like this into, an 8-foot tall thing that we, and ears of corn that are this big. And we've turned a basic little cabbage and brassica, into broccoli and cauliflower and, all of those, all of those things. So we've been doing this for a long, long time, recognizing, but nature can do it on its own anyway, create new species. But that's what hybridization means, or hybridizing means. is you're looking to take the best of one thing with the best of another and put them together. A lot of times that doesn't work. It doesn't do that. It's a less than. You put two things together and you hope to have hybrid vigor and something extra from it, which is what we got from all those crepe myrtle crosses. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. It doesn't. You get the poor flowering and the powdery mildew, instead. So, both of those things can happen. Okay, somebody said they read that the species tulips perennialize better in the southeast. Do they still need to be lifted and chilled? It really is still winter dependent. We do have a lot of species tulips that come back in this garden, but even they just decline slower, I'll say, in this garden than the other hybridized, tulips from the Netherlands. If you wanted, you would still be better off lifting them and chilling them, even those. Again, we have some come back and they look good out here, but they're definitely less than they were last year. And we had a pretty good winter this past year that should have been helpful to it, and it just wasn't. From nutrients. Oh, okay. So this person is creating a standard form of a plant. So where I'm tree forming that hydrangea paniculata or tree forming my Chinese viburnum over there, how long should they leave the lower branches on? So this is the thing I've talked about with bonsai, where folks leave the lower branches. Like if I was going to turn, if I was going to limb this Japanese maple way up or do something interesting with it, how long would I leave these lower leaves on it that I'm ultimately going to take off? Because these lower leaves are obviously helping gather energy, not as much on this chartreuse plant, but certainly on darker green leaves, are helping gather energy to grow the plant a little bit faster. It's totally up to you. As long as you can tolerate them, on there, then leave them. But those lower branches, again, help gather energy to help grow it faster. I tend to have less patience than other people, so I would probably cut it off almost immediately. But yes, keeping it on there helps. Let's see. Okay, so here's another controversial question. Will AI replace landscape designers? I definitely don't think so. I think it can aid probably landscape design, but from what I've seen AI is going to change, everything. And I watch a lot of YouTube videos on it. A lot of, it's going to change things really, really quickly in the next 5 to 10 years. And really, really fast, maybe faster than we can adapt in a lot of different ways. But in this particular area, we have bad information in, bad information out. Problem for gardening on AI, as far as I can tell. If I ask it, give me 10 the 10 best screening plants for Raleigh, North Carolina, it's going to give me Leyland cypress as number one. It's going to give me the same 10 plants over and over and over again, because it seems like, and I don't know this, but because I have not created AI models, but it seems like it really weights the history of the internet. So Leyland cypress has probably been the most talked about screening plant in the history of the internet. And so it's number one. On any screening plant request you get, Leyland cypress is number one, I think, because of that. Nellie R. Stevens holly, that's the basic 10 screening plants. So it feels kind of a bit unhelpful for somebody who's actually trying to create something that's interesting or new. It seems slightly problematic for some of the brands who are introducing plants really, really quickly. How to get those plants in the models and get them used in landscape design. And so it feels like maybe one day, but it seems like it's not as big of a target right this second as some of the other jobs that could be negatively impacted by AI. Is it capable of creating landscape designs? Absolutely. I think it'll be the same 25 plants, over and over and over again, used for them. So that'll be it will be an interesting thing to see how it evolves, but it needs information, on lots more plants and how to use them, how to grow. I mean, every single plant out here, you know, has a different, is going to grow differently in different places in the country, have different requirements based on, you know, soil types and humidity related things that like local people at garden centers across the country have some idea of that probably has never made it into the information online. You know, some of those local things like that that are going to be helpful. So I don't think that many people in our business are going to be replaced with it very quickly, but it can aid. I mean, obviously it's an aid. I've already used it as an aid, not for writing. I don't want it to write anything for me, but I will, you know, I've built, you know, building a database of things that we've already shot and that kind of thing. You know, I've used it already. I think it's going to be a great tool within the business, but not necessarily replacing anyone in our business. And it's certainly not going to come out and spread mulch or prune plants or do a lot of the physical labor that needs to be done in our gardens. Let's see. Do Vitex rebloom if deadheaded? Yes, they're a lot more likely to rebloom. You know, crepe myrtles, I don't know why this is the crepe myrtle video for some reason. They tend to rebloom a little bit less and a little bit shorter. Vitex, once they get going, they tend to get going a little later than the crepe myrtles do. Like crepe myrtles around the city now are, especially Natchez and Muskogee, they're almost in full bloom right now. And my Vitex isn't quite open. We haven't had enough quite hot days yet, but once it gets started, it'll bloom until frost. So it's much longer bloomed once it gets started, and you can cut them and they'll flush back out and bloom again. Yes. Let's see. If using compost and wood chip method, how important is getting up 25-year-old landscape fabric? I would definitely want to get up as much of the fabric as you possibly can. Once it reaches 25 years old, even well-made landscape fabric is probably starting to break down in that soil a little bit and getting frayed edges on it, and you're going to end up with, I mean, there's a lot of problems with it. I mean, you know, I've talked about it a bunch, but I mean, number one, it makes the soil anaerobic underneath it. There's no exchange. You can pile all the organic material up in the world on top of a piece of plastic, even a piece of breathable plastic. It's not going to allow earthworms to move through it. It's not going to allow all the natural exchanges. And when I pull that stuff up, it usually smells bad underneath it, where it's created anaerobic conditions. So it's just not good in general. And then on top of that, as a bonus, it breaks down into little pieces of tiny plastic that's going to stay in your soil forever and ever if you don't get it up. This person has an orange rocket barberry, getting thick at the top and thin at the base. They're worried it will flop. Should they tip prune it? That's how orange rocket grows. It grows up and out like that. If you get a branch that flops over too far, instead of tip pruning it, I'd almost take that piece all the way back down into the plant a little bit. But that's how I was trying to see if I could see mine back there. But that plant grows like that. It's like a fountain. So I wouldn't worry about it all that much. I think it looks probably like it's going to flop more than you think it is. But when we saw them up at Jay Sifford's mountain house, Roadwood, I think he calls his garden, there were like 5 of them out there, and they were exactly what you're describing. They were up and out, but they weren't flopping over. They were rigidly, it was able to hold itself up like that. Are you going to label educational space of the native garden? Yes. We have someone that's actually making the tags, an incredible viewer of the channel that's making the tags. We have mapping. We're going to have tags on a lot of the plants, but he is actually making the metal tags for the native garden over there and has already sent us a bunch of them. And so we have the native garden will definitely be tagged, and we're going to be working on tagging this side as well, temporarily for the time you're here, but permanently in the future. So in future years, as we continue to do this open garden event, you're going to see those kinds of things evolve and some educational stuff around them. Hopefully be able to, at some point, have all the plants that are in this garden and any other garden that we happen to be working on at the time, places where you can learn about the plants as well. You know, the video, some sort of a also written part to match the video that probably exists somewhere. So somebody just said Japanese maples in containers, advice. We grow lots of Japanese maples in containers and have for a long time. Generally, you can plant them into whatever potting soil in the container and fertilize them with an organic fertilizer, and they're really resilient in containers for a couple of seasons. Then I'll take it out of the container at some point, knock some of the soil off of it, put some fresh soil in there and keep it in there for another year or two. They're really, really resilient as container plants. The contorted Japanese maple that's over here, that was in a container for 10 years, you know, while I did that. I mean, just as container plants go, they're not the one I'm stressing about. Just make sure they got a drain hole in the bottom of them. Make sure water, you know, when you water it, it doesn't just sit in water. Occasionally refresh some of the soil that's in the container, and I just throw some organic fertilizer in there and move on. They're like the easiest, one of the easier things. If you're in zone 5, that pot can't stay frozen all winter, or zone 6 even, so you'll probably need to bring it in and out to make sure that that container thaws out during the winter months. Let's see. Last question for this week. Thank you guys again for participating. And again, today is the last day of the $50 off for the weekly garden planner. I think as you're watching this, I guess we'll have 2 more Q&As before the open garden. And I am speaking at the Plant Symposium in Raleigh, I think next Thursday as you're watching. That's on the 12th, I think. Last question for this week. What and where is the Wallace Garden? I keep saying the Wallace Garden. It's in Wallace, North Carolina. It's the Southeastern Gardens of Southeastern North Carolina is the botanic garden that is being created by David Johnson and his family at Johnson's Nursery. So he's got a nursery down, it's probably a little more than probably 3/4 of the way to Wilmington from Raleigh, Wilmington, North Carolina. So he's in just outside of what we call the Wilmington suburbs, I guess. Wilmington's a very fast growing city in eastern North Carolina. If you haven't been there, great beaches, some of the best beaches in the country down there. He's got a really nice nursery there. They sell wholesale to garden centers and landscapers, that kind of thing. Does a lot of different things too. A lot of annuals, perennials, and woody shrubs and trees, kind of all parts. But they've started a botanic garden there called Gardens of Southeastern North Carolina, and he's given us a section to put in ourselves. So I've got magnolias and a few other things that we know are going there already at this point. We have just not had time between Holly's decline earlier this year and other events that we've had going on, speaking engagements, this garden, having the native garden added over there. We have just had way too many things going on. But at some point, we're going to jump in there and start planting what I would call the bones, some of the bigger material, some of the slower growing things, trees, that kind of thing. It's much more space than we have here, so we can treat it a little bit differently, where this is, you know, lots of little things, you know, and when I mean lots of little things that you'll see when you get here. I mean, I could do a video, you know, on any of these little small spaces here, and, you know, have there's 30 plants every 20 square feet out here, or 30 square feet out here. That one will be able to grow some trees and some larger things, basically design something that people could use on a slightly larger lot. So anyway, there you go. Thank you guys so much for participating in the video. I'm probably just continuing to confuse people about why I don't use synthetic fertilizers and why I don't push plants when I initially put them in the ground. You know, I understand all that, but if there's something that you feel like you do that seems to have a positive impact for you in your garden, do it. There's I'm not the authority or anybody else. You know, if you think it's beneficial to you in some way, it's just at the end of the day, I'm trying to have folks put get the most out of your garden with the least amount of inputs, is hopefully what I'm trying to teach and encourage on the channel. Thanks for watching.